Welcome back to another episode of the Grappling Growth podcast with me, Joe Testori. On episode 45, I had the privilege of welcoming on Callum Church. He is the Chief Creative Officer of HelpBank and essentially the creative mind behind the Simon Squibb brand. Callum and I sat down for about 2 hours total between the pre-shoot, the shoot and post-shoot talking, and he was a guy who I just felt massively aligned with. So I really enjoyed this podcast. We talk about what it takes to grow your channel. At the time of recording, the Simon Squibb YouTube channel has over 1.5 million followers and over 2 million followers on Instagram, and that's growing daily. And that's just testament to the vision and the work that they are putting in to their brand. If you want to look behind the curtain into a just revolutionary, innovative personal brand, then this podcast is for you. This works really well in the last podcast that's been released with Jack, his best friend and his business partner. I would really recommend watching them together, maybe starting with Jackson coming onto this, because it really foils over together. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you find this podcast valuable. And if you did, then share it with a friend, give it a like, subscribe. Take care. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Callum, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me, man.
You're most welcome, man. So, first question is, what does growth look like to you, Callum?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't quite know exactly how I can put this beyond just kind of like consistency and turning up every day. I feel like most of growth is made in those moments that most people don't see. So, off the back of some of the cool stuff this year that we've done, like we've seen a lot of growth with HelpBank and what with Simon's brand. And we can speak a little bit about that perhaps. But, we've had real cred this year, but we've only had that cred based off of the back of the 3 years of work, which no one has actually really seen, building their foundations in order to build off of that and building that foundation of knowledge and, building up the numbers and all this kind of thing. So, if I had to put it in one word, I'd probably say growth is consistency, and it's made in those moments that people don't see,
And I heard a very good quote the other day from Jeff Bezos, who mentioned that most people are there, that they're spending 4 years to then make their 5th year very successful in business. And I think that happens with so many things, and that slightly follows the Pareto principle that 80% of your work will then lead to those 20% of results right at the end, and everything is done in silence. So kind of taking it back to the 3 years, talking about the brand and the vision as to where it is today, did you honestly ever imagine that it would be at where it is now, or was this like, wow, it's a pinch me moment?
It's a funny one, because I guess when this all started 3 years ago, when Simon sort of approached me and said to me like, hey, Callum, I'm starting this business. It's going to be influencer led. I need a content guy. Are you in? And I turned around and said, yes, hell yeah. And, immediately brought Jack in, and Jack and I kind of worked with Simon as like our first client of this agency we were thinking about. When all that happened back then, it was kind of like, I'm not really that big a vision guy. Me personally, I'm very good at taking someone else's vision and making it real. That's sort of like how I balance out with people like Jack or people like Simon, for example. So, I'm not a huge vision guy. I can't tell you that I saw it exactly how I would see it now back then. But one thing I did know for sure was that, Simon, when I first met him, had just come off the back of like a big exit in Hong Kong, where he sold his agency Fluid to PwC for like millions and millions and millions. And he just moved back to the UK and was about to start this new venture together with Jack and I. So, I took an educated guess that whatever this dude was going to be working on next, like it was going to be successful. So I was willing to go all in on it, and like not long into working with Simon, he kind of turned around to me and said, hey, Callum, how much savings do you have? And I was like, oh, dude, I got about 15K that I'd saved up from like, working and being kind of smart with money as I was growing up. And he said, great, put that into the business, because he wanted me to have equity, but he wanted me to buy in. And I was like, okay, dude, you're a millionaire. Like, why do you need my 15K? And the reason for it is because he wanted me to be bought in, have some skin in the game into what we were building. So, I was willing to go all in and put my time, my energy, my money, my life savings all on the line to make this happen. So, like I say, I've never really been a huge vision guy, but I knew that whatever we'd be working on, we would find success one way or another.
Mm-hmm. And for you, when you put that 15K in, because 15K for anyone in the early 20s generally is a lot of money, and for you
Mm.
is all of your money, so to speak. Did you have any moments of hesitation when you thought, fuck, shall I actually do this, or is this a bit crazy?
You know what? No, not really. It took about, maybe a couple of minutes to think about when Simon first sort of said that, we should do this. But like I said, I was confident, and to be honest with you, man, I really believe in what we're building in, what we're working on and what we're building. Like this mission that we're on of sort of like giving people the tools that they need in order to live the life that they dream of, to live their dream, whatever that be, however big or small. That matters to me, and that personally really resonates with me. So it's like, in some ways it doesn't matter, because if that meant that I was, you know, going to be able to work even harder on the thing that I already cared about, then great. I think it was only a positive thing to do.
Yeah, I think it was such a smart move by him. For you, is there a moment in your childhood that you can trace back to where you feel that you were fueled by purpose?
Yeah. So I guess for me personally, when people always ask me like my dream specifically, I always say to them like, look, I want to wake people up. I want people to realize that they only have one life, and that you have this one life, you have this one opportunity. You should be working towards your dream, whatever that may be, right? Because you have limited time. So and where that really comes from for me, and when people ask me questions like this, I always go back to like when I was about 6 years old. I want to say 5 or 6. I remember it so vividly. I remember this was the moment in my life where I first realized I was going to die. I really like understood and comprehended that idea in my head, and I remember crying to my mum, and I remember it vividly. Like I was looking at the dishwasher in my childhood home, because I was only so tall, right? And I was crying to my mum, and my mum was like, "Hey, don't worry, you've got so much time. It's a long way away," kind of thing. But that feeling, that dread of like this isn't going to last forever, really stuck with me. I don't know why. I don't know for what reason it did. But growing up, that always really motivated me to like live the best life possible and really like make the most of this one life I have. And it's become like a core part of my own personal philosophy. I've got Memento Mori tattooed to my arm. And I like to think that I live by this every day, trying to make every moment count. And this is partly the realization I want for other people. You've got one life, you've got one shot. Make the most of it, man, and don't waste it by working towards someone else's dream. Yeah, you got to live life for you, right?
And I think the great thing about your dream, or our dream plurally, is that if you were to say to every human on earth, what is your dream, write it down on a piece of paper, you would get 8 billion different answers, because what goes around in our brains is just so different. And we have our own idiosyncrasies, our own quirks, what we like, what we don't like. And I think it's just kind of pulling everything together and just trying to work with, as we've said, the word purpose. And I've always tried to think, and it was partly why I quit my banking job 5, nearly 6 years ago now,
Mm.
because I just thought I would rather try and fail and know I've tried when I'm 70 years old than just say I just stuck into the status quo and just did what is seen to be the right thing. So and I actually have something very similar to you, as to I cried when I was younger when I realised that I was going to die,
Mm.
and it just brought me back to instantly when I woke my mum up crying. So I like that. We were very similar on that trajectory. So for you then, looking at everything you've done in the last 3 years with Help Bank, are there any stories of people that I'm sure you've got tons, but is there one story that sticks out and you think, wow, that was just unreal what we did with this person, and we inspired that person in such a great way?
Yeah, the funny thing is, it's almost backwards in a way because, I think everyone sees the impact that we have on the people in the videos that we help, but the most rewarding thing for me, off the back of the work we do, is the people that see the videos and are inspired. If you see our videos, you'll see Simon handing out cash to people as like funding for their business and stuff, and you'll see like we'll give people the information and the knowledge downloads in order to work on their dreams and give them the support and the helping hand that they need to get started. But like I said to you just before we started recording, like the most rewarding and amazing feeling that I get off the back of our work is like all these people that come up to Simon in the street and they run up to him and they say, hey, I've been watching your videos for like the last year or so, and I just want to say thank you because I've started my business and now I'm at this point, and they talk about like all the amazing achievements that they've had. So like the real impact of what we have, it's not just that one person that we help in the videos, and that matters. It's not just that though. It's the millions of people that see it and get inspired off the back of it and go off and work on their own dreams and stuff. That's the most amazing thing for me. So when you ask that question, it's almost like trying to pick your favorite child, or what I imagine that might be. So I'm going to slightly cop out on that and just say it's almost everyone that gets inspired off the back of the work that we do, because that's the best bit, and it's the community we build off the back of it. We've got over 150,000 people signed up to Help Bank, all helping each other every single day. That's a really awesome thing to build off the back of the work that you do.
And before we started recording, we spoke about Hong Kong in the UK, and this is something I've spoken to at length with friends. What's your perspective on the British education system right now?
The British education system. Well, to be honest with you, I mean, I only truly know deeply the British education system over anything else. But from what I hear from other people around the world as well, is that the education system is kind of broken worldwide anyway. Like all of these systems, they're all working to produce workers, not necessarily like individual thinking people that feel the confidence to work on their own things. So I think it's kind of broken worldwide. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I was privately educated my whole life, and I was in state education for a couple of years during college, and I hated it, to be honest with you. So my experience with the British education system isn't great. And off the back of that, I went more or less straight into well, first of all, an apprenticeship to upskill myself, but then off the back of that, went into working freelance and working for myself. So the whole time I was trying to escape it in some ways, I feel. Even though I feel like I probably got a better experience than most being privately educated for the vast majority of it.
And I was talking to a friend who I went to school with, and it's so sad at times that so many people's perception is formed by what happens at school. So for me, I was bullied pretty much all throughout school. So straight away, every time I think back to school, I just think back to that. And I know that bullying doesn't happen to every single kid, but it happens to a lot of kids there. And that really just dwarfs their experience there. I used to just dread waking up in the morning, and I would always be the last one in school just because I said, how can I shorten my experience at school? And I was always the first one out because I just thought, I absolutely hate this. So I just want to limit the time that I have there. So I suppose with what you're doing at Help Bank, it's kind of pulling that education gap that a lot of people have missed out on. Question to you is top 3 book recommendations.
Top 3 book recommendations. Well, you know what? I'm not actually that big a reader. I'm a much better visual person, so I love learning like YouTube and stuff. So I'm a self-taught editor. I taught myself editing from YouTube, and that's kind of been the foundation skill that I've built my career off of. And now I'm, stepping into more of a creative direction type role within the company and leading the team and stuff. But beyond that, favorite book recommendation. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is On the Shortness of Life, written by Seneca.
Never heard of that. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a collection of letters which Seneca, a Roman philosopher, wrote to his friends, about life and stuff, and the type of topics that it talks about is partly what makes a great life. Like there's a few lines in the book that really woke me up and were really kind of like the start of my self-development journey. I like to think. It was this book that said things like, how do you judge the how well lived like a man's life is. Just because they have gray hairs on their head doesn't mean they've lived a long time. It just means they've existed a long time. So what does really living mean? It started generating these ideas in my head, and off the back of that, I got into the typical self-development journey that I think a lot of people get into. Going to the gym, working on yourself, and reading, I guess, and learning and working on that and learning a skill, and then eventually, of course, getting into entrepreneurship. And
When did you first read it?
Where did I first read it? You know what? I can't actually remember where I got this book from. I feel like I was in a bookstore, and I was just drawn to it for whatever reason. I speak to some people. I always have this kind of experience where, like, for some reason, a book just calls out to you. It's kind of like that feeling. But I first read this book when I was abroad, on a holiday, like on almost like a digital detox type thing, dopamine detox. And I just forced myself to read this book, and I read the whole thing front to back in, a couple of days or so, 3 days, and ever since then, it's sort of sparked this whole journey for me, I guess.
I suppose it's a case that all you needed one thing to happen, whether that means a guy walking up to you in the street with a mic and saying, "What's your dream?" or you just taking that leap and that step to saying, "Hey, I'm just going to read this book." And I think for 99% of people, it's the things that they do in silence that actually produce the changes and results. And change, as we know, only happens from actually taking action. And I think that's so cool because I'm fascinated by Stoic philosophy. So I will go and download that to my online reading list and read that very, very soon, because I think if you've said that's had such a profound impact on just, I guess it's life-changing, that book to you, that put you in a path that you may be going this way, and it just absolutely flipped you to the other direction.
Yeah, for sure, man. You should definitely pick it up. Seneca's a great philosopher. I put him up there with all the greats,
And if we were to open up your YouTube feed, who would be on your YouTube feed right now?
On my YouTube feed, well, first and foremost, it's got to be Simon Squibb, right? I've got to get that plug in there. My YouTube feed, it's funny. I like I said, I love learning. So a lot of my YouTube feed is like animated history documentaries type thing.
Okay.
Like
what?
Like what? Like I think there's this one channel that's like History Matters or something like that. It's sort of like silly documentary type stuff. But the reason why I love it, and the reason why I love YouTube as a platform, is just because it's full of creators that just want to follow their natural curiosity. So there's creators that want to follow their natural curiosity and just make videos about what they love and get rewarded for that, which is awesome. But also there's like a whole audience of people that just want to follow their innate curiosity, whatever's just like wherever that guides them, and like off the back of like the YouTube as a platform, like I said before, like I've been able to teach myself editing, and Premiere Pro and all this kind of thing. And what I get naturally curious about as part of that is also history as well. So to answer your question, I guess my YouTube feed is pretty vast and varied. I kind of go through phases of enjoying random stuff, some things productive, some things less so. But yeah, my feed is pretty varied.
Nice. So Simon Squibb and history.
Oh, yeah. Those are the fundamentals, aren't they?
There we go. And I've tuned in so many of his little, I guess they're not even bite-sized, but his podcast of his own. And James Smith was one that stood out to me recently. And I think I actually got in contact with a young man who was on one of his videos. He approached him in Oxford Circus. And I just commented on the video, and then he followed me, and then we just got chatting. And I really, fingers crossed to Lucas, big shout out to Lucas, that he ends up going out to Australia as soon as possible and partners with James there, because that's so cool. And I just think that's the power of just putting yourself out there and learning as such, so to speak, which is
because Lucas, the kid involved in the video, he actually like went up to Simon and also like semi-interrupted Simon speaking to someone else to like grab the opportunity.
He's so polite as well.
Say again?
he was just so polite. You could tell that he wanted to respect Simon's space. And then I think he even asked him if he could shake his hand. I just thought that's just testament to his character.
Yeah. Well, he's an awesome kid. And I can tell you, at the time of recording this podcast, Lucas has just got off the back of like an interview with James. And I know that he's going to be heading out to Australia as part of a 6-month internship across James's companies. So, it's pretty awesome. And it's stuff like that as well. We're talking about impact earlier in the podcast. Like, it's stuff like that just sets your heart on fire, because it's making a difference, the work that we do.
Interestingly, I had a thought in the shower the other day, and right now I'm in Colombia, and I was in rural Colombia in the middle of nowhere. Literally, I think the average person, I was talking to my friend, I'm staying with his family, he said that he reckons the average person earns probably £100 a month here. Mm-hmm. And what I love so much about it is that it's such a community that this guy buys passion fruits off this guy, and this guy gets his hair cut off this guy, and this guy gets a lift from this guy. And there's just such community spirit that everyone just looks at it and they think, well, we don't want to try to get people from outside of the town to do stuff because A, it's physically impossible, but B, it's if we can keep the money together and we can just help each other, then that's it. And I've always thought to myself, if literally everyone in the world just thought about the next person along, how much better we would be.
Yep, exactly. You're spot on, dude. And this is kind of like exactly the feeling which we're trying to foster at Help Bank and generate within the platform that we've built. Because like I said earlier, we've got over 150,000 people on Help Bank, which is our platform designed to help people, all helping each other every single day. And it's like this tribal feeling that I do truly believe is actually innate in every human being. If you find that and you try and reconnect with that again, it's within everyone, and like you said, if we all just helped each other, geez, how much better the world would be if we did just help each other just that little bit. It would be crazy. Like, if you think about it, we've gone as human beings from cavemen all the way up to like an incredibly advanced civilization that have gone to the moon and done all this crazy stuff, right? And it's like, how have we done that? Well, we've done that by building stuff and improving civilization and society and humanity and stuff. By once upon a time we were banging rocks, now we're building rockets. How have we done that? Well, we've leveled ourselves up as people and worked together and helped each other. Imagine if we really did start generating that helping each other sort of vibe more, how much faster we could go, how all the crazy stuff it would be like robots would be doing everything. No one would ever have to like really do all the crappy jobs that no one even wants to do. And I know Naval Ravikant speaks about this a lot. He has this whole thought exercise of like, let's make everyone rich, and he talks about, in the future, if we did all upskill and help each other and stuff like that, the robots would be doing all of the crappy jobs that no one wants to do, and we'd be doing all the fun, creative jobs just to entertain and just to entertain each other and make each other happy. So, I guess this is kind of like the feeling which we're trying to foster at Help Bank, and we are fostering. So yeah.
You literally plucked the person I was thinking about right out of my mind. I was thinking about Naval Ravikant, and one of my favorite books ever is it's not written by him, but it's the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. And I think, and he was one of the people, I read his book about a year ago, but I was consuming a lot of his literature online, mainly YouTube and Spotify. But it was just thinking about where we can get to. And I remember studying back at uni a concept called creative destruction, which looks at new innovations and concepts essentially obliterate what's currently in place. So maybe the way how everyone was serving drinks out of a plastic cup, or initially people were literally drinking out of their hands, weren't they, back in caveman time? And then you have plastic cups, and now you have these really nice, easy, durable, long-lasting, environmentally friendly cups. And it's that everything should be done to then improve and further advance things. And I think people are in this fear bubble where they think, oh my God, AI is going to take my job, or this is going to happen to me. But exactly as you said, if you could turn around and just use AI for the basic mundane jobs, as we can use ChatGPT now for loads of basic things that we're doing now, it means that there's more profit within businesses. Therefore, you can employ and hire and bring in better talented people to then upskill them and help them grow.
Yeah, like the perfect example of this that I think a lot of your listeners will be able to really recognize and resonate with is this whole like Blockbuster versus Netflix thing. You know, like Blockbuster got knocked off its podium by Netflix. Why? Because they didn't innovate, because they didn't go with the times. It's like, you know, the around the time of the internet where things were starting to go online, everyone saw that as like, oh, it's a scam, or it's dodgy, or I don't want to get involved with that, or maybe perhaps they just weren't educated enough, you know. And for whatever reason, Blockbuster didn't innovate. Meanwhile, Netflix did, and they got knocked off that podium. Now Netflix like owns a lot of, you know, TV and films, right? So, well, like, what's to learn from this? Well, I guess it's partly like what we're trying to do at HelpBank, of like educating people. Like, okay, what is actually going to happen with AI? Is AI going to steal your jobs? Well, no, not necessarily. Only if you don't go with the times, you don't, you know, keep learning and you know, learn how you can leverage AI. You know, because then you'll be Netflix, you won't be Blockbuster. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's yeah, interesting thought.
I must say it was a sad day when Blockbuster closed down.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're pretty happy now that you got Netflix on tap, right? You just click of a button, you can watch something. You don't have to go to the store and pick it up.
And to be fair, I don't even have a Netflix subscription, so it doesn't
What?
bother me, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
It's
well, go
after
ahead.
you. No,
Go
it's
ahead. I
such
wasn't
a
going to say
prevalent
anything.
point. It's such a prevalent point that you made, that it's that there's consistently a case of evolution, and I think that there's always waves of what can be found and what can be looked at. And I think where a lot of people get caught up is that they see the crypto wave and they think, oh my God, I've missed this wave.
Hmm.
But if they were to expand their mind, and this is me included, and thought about, well, crypto's been and gone, or let's just make that assumption. What's the next thing that I can look at? Or how can I just do something that might even be more aligned to me, that I actually find passion in? Because there's so many people who jump into crypto who just don't actually care about it. They just want to flip some money,
Hmm.
but that doesn't actually give them anything in the long run apart from cash and bank. And the point I'm making is there's so many things out there that people could look at exploring and go into that just gives them actual value and purpose. And I think one of the best things that I've ever seen, or kind of things that I've done, is martial arts. And the thing that I absolutely love about martial arts is that martial artists and people who run, say, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai gyms, generally, they're not the wealthiest of people, but they absolutely love what they do every single day. And most of them who I speak to say they wouldn't change it for the world. And I go traveling around countries, jump into gyms, and rarely ever do I ever get charged by the guy. And he could easily say, hey, it's $10, $20 to jump into a session, because they absolutely love sharing their knowledge. And this is something I've tried to branch back into, to think, if I was a jiu-jitsu instructor, I would never charge people for it, or just kind of like jumping into sessions, and they just love sharing their knowledge. But I feel in business a lot of the time, people gatekeep so much knowledge because they're fearful that those people are going to then take their jobs or their business.
Hmm. Yeah, well, you know what? Like, the way I see it, I feel like a lot of people have this whole like dog eat dog kind of view on business, and I think that's kind of outdated and actually kind of false. The way I see it is like we should be working together and helping each other, and that, you know, like Simon, for example, he has this whole catchphrase of like 1 + 1 = 11. You know,
Uh-huh.
and what he means by that is that, you know, the sum of a thing is greater than the value of its parts. I
Yeah.
think I got that right. You know, it's like we're better together, we're stronger together. So like instead of like always having this idea of like, aha, we've always got to compete in business, or whatever. What happens if you just like partnered up with people? You know, then you don't have to compete against anyone, and you're both stronger together. You know what I mean? And also, you know, again, this is kind of partly why having a purpose is so important. It's like, you know, no one can really compete with what we're building at Help Bank, because if they are competing with us, if they are doing like the same thing, then they're not competing, because we're not working to dominate or anything like this. Any you know, crappy ideas like that. We're working just to make the world a better place. So if someone else helps to make the world a better place, then great, it's a better world. You know. Um, so I guess that's probably where those Muay Thai or those Jiu-Jitsu instructors get that whole thing from, is like, what do you really value in the world? Is it money, or is it progress, making the world a better place? You know, in their case, making themselves a better person or making their students a better person, and upskilling. So so yeah.
For you, where do you think the mindset of being individualistic as opposed to collective comes from?
I think it comes from school, probably, and I guess, yeah, I think it probably comes from school. It's as we're going through this education system, and I know we spoke about the education system not being quite right earlier in the podcast. I think it comes from this whole thing of, like, grading, and like you versus me. It's kind of like this whole thing, like, oh, what did you get in the maths test? It was like,
Yeah.
oh, I got an A. It was like, oh, I got a B. I'm not as good as you. Like, I want to be better than you because I want to get into the better universities, and I need to compete against you. And it's like, well, you know what? In the real world, we don't really necessarily work like that. Like, let's say you get an A in maths and I get a D in maths, but I get an A in art and you get a D in art. It's like, well, if we're working on a company or a project that needs a really great artist and a really good mathematician, um, clearly I should never be a dialect coach, mathematician, then together we can come together and build something really awesome. Like, screw being better than another person. It's like, no, let's just work together. Do you know what I mean? So I think it comes from school and having an outdated education system that doesn't really reflect or work towards what society could be or should be. Yeah, I think that's where it comes from for me.
A friend of mine, this was a couple of years ago, he he kind of got down in the dumps and just said to me, he's like, "Oh man, you're just so much further ahead of me in life." And I was like, "Okay." And based on what metric are you looking at?
Mm,
He's like, "Well, look at you, you run a successful business." And I was like, "Okay." But then equally, and we train jiu-jitsu together, I was like, "You're a grade higher than me there." And equally, you've run a marathon and you're aesthetically fitter than me. So does that not make you better than me in life? He's
mm,
like, "Well, I guess so." And I was like, "Listen, man, you are a result of the thing that you put your time and inputs into. And for me, I've just put more time and inputs into my business as opposed to jujitsu. Therefore, I'm better at business than I am at jujitsu. But that's not to say that in time I might just turn around and just hyper focus on something completely different. I might turn around and just start doing art in the next 6 months, and then I'm an amazing artist, and then I'm not as good at something else. And I think where people look at is, which is just a weird phenomenon, is that we're looking over our shoulder, looking at the other person running and saying, "Oh, that guy's going really fast over there," but his goal is just so different. And I guess if we loop it back, his dream is so different to our dreams.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's why it's, you just got to stay focused on what's your dream, and really, like, ask yourself that question, like, what is my dream? Where do I want to go? Like, and what do I need to get there? And, like, look, if you need a really great jujitsu guy to help you get there, maybe you want to, Lord knows why you would need a jujitsu guy, but maybe a security or something like that. Like, partner up, do it together. Let's make it happen together. Like, think about, it's kind of like, yeah, like, comparison is the thief of joy. It's
Yeah.
trite and it's cliche, but it's like, it is actually really true. So you can't waste any of your energy on that stuff.
I guess like one piece of advice, and this is something that I always try to loop back to, and this is the purpose of this podcast. When I've really got down to the core of it, is I love the networking aspect of it. But the
Hmm.
biggest thing that I wanted to look at, and I turn 30 in 2 months' time, and I have my little brother, he's 22, my sister's 18, and I speak to so many young people who they're just clueless in what they want to do in life, and they're just looking for a bit of, not even like to push them, but just that they're swimming and you just kind of tilt them that way just to make sure they stay in that lane that they're going down. What advice would you give to 20-year-old Callum?
What advice would I give to 20-year-old Callum? It's a good question. Um, I, I do truly think that a lot of where you get to in life, or or where you get to up here in your head. I feel like a lot of that really is partly dictated by your environment and who you spend the most time with. I'm so blessed in my life to have met Jack, my business partner, and Simon, who's a mentor business partner as well. Um, I know how much I've grown in the last 3 years working closely with those guys. Um, and it is because you just learn by osmosis. Like I've been in the fast track lane, purely just because I've been able to work so closely with Simon and just download all of his mindset, his knowledge, the access that he's gotten me over the last few years. Um, so yeah, my advice to Callum would really be, well, partly team up with Simon and Jack, but that I guess the main thing that applies to everyone and your audience is, think about how you can spend as much time as possible with people whose life you want. So like, look, if you're not a guy that's particularly driven by all the flashy crap, then don't spend time with all the Dubai boys. you
As
know
we spoke
um
about.
but if you want to you know live a life that's fulfilled, then find the guy that's fulfilled. And maybe um that's not necessarily a materialistic thing. I know we fall into the trap within this sort of space of business and stuff, that we fall into that materialistic trap, but maybe where you want to get to in life isn't necessarily down that route either. So yeah, spend time with people that have the life you want, and spend time with people that want to go the same way you want to go. Because to loop back to what we were speaking about earlier, like, you do truly go further together. Like 1 + 1 = 11. I'm a much better guy in partnership with Jack. I feel like, together, Jack and I as a combo are much more valuable than the sum of us two individually, if we weren't to work together. um so yeah, just find people that align with you on a moral standpoint, on a vision standpoint, where you want to get to in life, what you want from life. And also spend as much time as possible with people that have gone that way that you want to go, whatever that may be.
Unreal. I also think, and I see a lot of people get caught up in being really, really greedy and wanting the whole cake of a really, really small cake. But
Hmm.
one of the biggest beauties that I found in life, and I think this just comes down to humans, we are naturally social creatures. You typically can't go an extended period of time without socializing with people. And I know there's some people listening who will be like, I could do that. But at the same time, one of the biggest beauties I've seen in business and in just physical training is doing it with people. It's when you finish a workout or a session with your friend, and you just dap them up and you're like, oh man, that was a really good session. Or you see someone who's turned around who comes into your gym, and it doesn't even matter. It could be jiu-jitsu, it could just be lifting weights, and their confidence is on the floor, and they've got limited technique, and then in a year's time you can just see this person blossom like a flower, and just everything's changed. And I think one of the things that I'm proudest of in business is just watching some people who I brought into the team. And I never call people employees because I don't see it as that. I always see it as a team,
Mm.
because they're helping me get to my vision, and I hope in turn I'm helping them get to their vision. And I've always said that, I guess it's kind of like a Christmas strapline, but no employees for life. And it's a case of I'm just there to facilitate their next move. And I've always been okay and at peace that someone who's come to the team will just go on to do something eventually of their own. It's so cool just to keep tabs of people and see what they're doing. And I think when I look back to 20-year-old Joe, I would say to be so fluid with what you're doing, and don't get pigeonholed or boxed up in, I have to do this, because there's just so many opportunities out there to go through the revolving door and come back out through.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. To be fair, though, there is a case to be had for like commitment as well. Like sometimes I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, and maybe some people in your audience as well, might be almost paralyzed by too many choices. It's kind of like this whole Netflix thing of like, you can scroll and scroll and scroll on Netflix forever because there's just endless amounts of movies to watch. So which one do you want? Sometimes you just need to, click that option of like, pick for me, please, and just like go all in and commit. So, yeah, I know what you mean about. Yeah, apologies, I've lost my train of thought there.
Revolving door, I last said. Picking different options and just going and starting, going back. But you mentioned the
Yeah,
point about commitment.
I just feel like you get a lot further if you really commit to one thing. And if
Mm-hmm.
you look at like, successful people in the world, like the people that have built really something big and something great are the people that have just committed to something and just grinded it out every single day and just took those punches to the face every single day until eventually it did become something great. So there is an argument to say that commitment is something that you really want to or should foster. And I think going back to purpose, like one of the things that gets you there is purpose, is working on something bigger than yourself, something that's not just money or not just for status, but something that's really going to make the world a better place.
Precisely. And I think I was going to say that loops directly back to your point that if you're doing something that you're passionate about and you love, quite often the work doesn't actually feel like work, and you can commit to a vision for an extended period of time where you're not making the money that you want, where you're not achieving what you think you deserve. But it's doing that silent work, that the 80% of the work, to then get the 20% of rewards. Or, I mean, the reward normally happens at the last 1%. For Simon, it was technically exiting the business, but he had to do those 10 years of that work. And the crazy thing is about business is that nothing's guaranteed at the end.
Hmm. Yeah, you just got to grind it out until something happens one way or another. And yeah, that's partly it. It's like it's commitment, man. It's persistence. It's like those people that might not have something in the end, maybe if they kept going they would have something. It's kind of like, it makes me think of that one graphic of like where there's that miner and he's chipping away at a mountain. He's chipping away, chipping away, chipping away, and then one day he gives up, and little did he know, just like one extra hour of chipping away he would have hit gold. It's like commitment and persistence is, it's a big thing. And like, look, entrepreneurship is, it's pretty boring, to be honest with you, man. Like, it's so glamorized and like oversold, I guess, and social media and stuff like that. But like, the reality of it is like, or at least in my case, at least, it's sitting in my apartment and just grinding most days.
Mm.
That's pretty much it.
Are you familiar with a concept known as the plateau of latent potential?
I'm not. Enlighten me.
So it essentially looks at exactly what we're looking at, and you're talking about the guy who's chipping away and hitting the gold, but it looks at the time lag between efforts and achieving the results that we want, and our efforts don't make a visible change until they cross a certain point. So I guess it slightly fosters into the Pareto principle. But I remember coming across the concept years ago, and it basically highlighted that most people fell just before they hit that axis point, whereby
Mm.
all of this effort is then going to achieve the results. And I naturally I look to your LinkedIn as any good reporter publisher would do before, and you reposted something from 4 months ago of Simon's YouTube, and you see it time and again. And I looked at James Smith's, I love his content. James Smith's chart, it's literally just flatline, 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 bang. Like it's just such a common theme.
Yep. Yeah, dude, honestly, building that YouTube channel is like, it's been painful, man. And I've got the receipts for it as well. Like, I remember I've still got the messages on my WhatsApp of like Simon and I were talking about the YouTube channel, and we're saying like, Simon was saying something along the lines of like, look, YouTube isn't working, short form is. Let's just double down on short form and let's stop like investing in the YouTube and stuff like that. I was like, no, Simon, come on, man, we're gonna do it. We're gonna crack it. And I've got a message saying like, dude, just let me do this. Like, it's gonna happen. And then like a few months after that, like we had the 30 years of business video, and it all kind of the YouTube channel went crazy this year. So yeah, I mean, that's like the cliche and overspoken about topic of like persistence and commitment and stuff. But it's true. Like I feel like you say, most YouTubers and creators, they've done those 3 years of hard work of not really reaching anyone and no numbers, and then boom, suddenly they're an overnight success. And it's like, yeah, it's to go back to what we spoke about earlier in the podcast, it's like, yeah, it's that 80% that people never see that make the 20% that everyone sees, And now, like, look, had we given up on that YouTube channel and just doubled down on short form, would we be seeing the success that we've had this year of like doubling our follower growth, well, almost tripling, I think, and having 10 million followers cross platform and like doing all the crazy stuff and all the crazy collabs with people like Alex Hormozy and all these types of people? It's like, yeah, I can't say for certain that we would have. So I'm very grateful for that stubbornness inside of me that kept pushing on the YouTube channel, because yeah, that was painful. And the thing with content is, especially YouTube, where you take bigger hits. Like on short form, you're at bat every single day, and you just swing and you might miss, but the next day you might swing and you hit something. With YouTube, it's at least a week. In our case, it was about a month every single time we had that swing. So we were taking big swings, man. And then we take big swings and we miss. And it was taking big swings and missing for 3 years straight, every single month. And that hurts, because you put a lot of time into a YouTube video. You put a lot of time into the thumbnails and stuff like that. But it's all a case of just getting better, keep improving. And eventually we had that hit, and we hit that home run. And since then, we've been in a good place on the YouTube channel. So
I'm really intrigued, and I was talking to another friend who's a creator the other day, and he just said YouTube is just. He was saying that one YouTube subscriber is worth 1,000 Instagram subscribers. I think it's just because you're building so much depth in there.
yeah.
But when you're sitting down, you're posting a 10, 15 minute, and some of the best videos that I love are just the ones that aren't edited, that it's a guy or girl who's just sat there with the camera there, and they're just going and they're just being really authentic, because it's not a cut up clip, and you have to breathe, and it's I messed up there. It's just straight through. It's off the bat. I guess to give yourself some kudos and credit, what do you think it was in you that gave you the power to turn around to Simon and just say, no, listen, man, let's stick down to this? Because there is a point where there's some stuff that we do in life that you keep on investing time, sunk cost fallacy, that you should pull out from. What gave you the foresight and the vision to actually say, I'm so confident on this?
I can't tell you that I was confident on it, to be honest, dude. It definitely wasn't coming from a place of confidence. I think it was stubbornness, and it was faith, to be honest. I didn't feel confident in myself to do it. I didn't know that I would be able to get this YouTube channel working, but it was just faith, man. Like, honestly, I struggled to put my finger on it. I think it was stubbornness. Maybe it was like a fear of failure as well. But I think fear of failure is something that everyone suffers with a little bit. But my sort of approach to that and overcoming that is throwing myself in. It's like throwing the backpack over the fence kind of analogy, right? It's like every single time I work on a project or I take something on, I always throw my backpack over the fence first. So what does this mean? Like on YouTube, it's just get started. Okay, not procrastinate and think, oh, how can we get this perfect before we launch? It's like, okay, crappy video to begin with, bit less crappy video, bit less crappy video, bit less crappy video, and eventually, like, okay, we're gonna have to make it work because the backpack's already over the fence. My name is already attached to this work. If I don't make this YouTube channel work, then what does that? It's like my backpack was over the fence in that I'd committed myself to this YouTube channel. So if I then don't pursue it and actually make it happen, I've lost my backpack. I've lost my I don't know. I don't know. I've lost that respect for myself, because I committed to this. I said I was going to do it. I'm going to bloody do it. I think it's that.
I like that analogy. I've never heard it before, but it makes perfect sense, and it's so easy to understand that you're just there, go for it. And I think that's very similar to one, and this is, I guess, a parable, but of burning the boats. You're on an island. The captain says half of his soldiers want to go back, half of his men are ready, and he just said to his two generals, burn the boats, and that's it. And you leave yourself no choice. And I always think that I believe, and I talk to a good amount of people every week who say, man, I want to do this. What would you recommend? What can I do? And a lot of the time, it's just burn the fucking boats, turn around and go all in, commit. Because when you dip your toe in the water, oh, it's too cold, just jump in the water. Once you've jumped in the water, you're going to figure out, I either want to swim out of here or I'm just going to sink into it, and that's it.
I have this all the time, and that's really my approach of like, oh, well, look, Simon has this, another one of his many, many catchphrases, I guess. He has this thing of like, having success in business, you can't just want it, you have to need it. He says this all the time, and I do believe this to be true. It's like, you can't just want to have a successful YouTube channel. You can't just want to have these things. You have to find a way, whatever it may be, to absolutely need it. Maybe put so much skin in the game that if you fail at this thing, then it's like the worst thing ever. Like that's really like the approach that you got to have. So, with this YouTube channel, I really did put a lot of my own, I guess, respect for myself. It's almost toxic, I suppose, but a lot of my own respect for myself in this YouTube channel. It's like, I didn't just want to be the guy that, worked on the creative of one short form series, but couldn't quite make it happen on YouTube. Like, what would that make me? Like, that's not gonna, the vision I have for myself of like this whole creative director type role that I'm within now. I can never step into those shoes if I can't make this YouTube channel work. So, God forbid that it never works, right? I'm gonna have to make it work. So that's kind of like my approach of like, yes, burn the boats, and find a way to absolutely need it, whatever that may be.
That level of self-respect that you have for yourself, where do you think it stems from, where you've got to the mindset, the thought process of, I need to be who I say, I feel, I believe I am, and I portray I am?
It's toxic. It's toxic for sure. This isn't necessarily the best approach for people to take, so maybe it's not very great advice, but I know what is good advice, and that is you kind of got to leverage what you have. I think this is like something that Hormozy talks about. It's like, you are who you are. If you have a toxic trait that drives you to be great, then maybe you just got to leverage it, right? So in my case, it's kind of always stemmed from this this feeling of lack for some reason. I'm not quite sure where this comes from. I probably need some fucking therapy on this or something. But it's this feeling of like trying to justify my existence almost. I was talking with some friends about this recently, and I can't quite put my finger on exactly where it comes from. Probably somewhere deep in my childhood. But you got to leverage what you got, So, I leverage that place of anxiety to drive me to achieve the things which I want to achieve in life. And so far, so good. I do definitely need therapy at some point, though.
Well, it's something that I started early this year, and I would say that I only did 4 sessions, so something that I know I need to get back to. It's not just one to get back to. And just speaking openly as a man, that I used to, and my mum's a therapist, but I had a massive stigma towards it. And I even spoke to her and said, I don't know, mum, I think therapy to an extent is a bit of bullshit. And I think if you're a strong enough man, you don't need it. But my view has changed. And I think just having kind of an outlet to really explore most things, and kind of what you said, childhood trauma, I think that's where 90% of what we do today as men and adults comes from. And it's just the way how I think of it. It's a case of you're looking at yourself as a child and you're just really ripping yourself back, and it's kind of like looking at a chessboard, looking at stuff and thinking, why did I make that move there? And then you realize why you made that move, whether it was right or wrong, and you don't judge yourself for it. You're like, okay, I understand, and I understand why that's led to me becoming the person I am today. And am I happy about it? Yes or no? But what am I going to do in the future to change these feelings, because it's all in our decision and power now once we have awareness. And I think kind of flipping that piece back to business, it's you can't change anything in whatever's happened in life. You can't change anything that's happened before, but you're in the position you are now, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, as the Stoics would say. You just move forward with it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's. I respect you a lot for speaking on it as a topic, and I actually love that analogy that you brought up. Like, my interpretation of what therapy is, and I have had a few sessions of therapy. I haven't managed to break down that toxic driver of mine just yet. I have a few clues, I suppose, but I won't speak to them on the podcast. But yeah, I think that that idea within guys that therapy is like this feminine or fluffy, or it's bullshit, or it's just crying about your emotions. I think we kind of have this idea of it because we don't necessarily see the logical point of it. I feel like a lot of dudes are more logical than emotional, at least sway towards that side of the spectrum a little bit more. And I think if you actually look at therapy for what it is, it's what it actually is. It's not really like dealing with your emotions as such. It's more understanding yourself. Why are you the way you are? It's a self-study with a therapist who's there to act as a mirror. They're there to help you shine that mirror on yourself, and then you can self-study, right? So I think if dudes look at it that way and see it in that more logical sense of like, oh, okay, well, if I understand, how I work a little bit more, then maybe I can be a better person within X, or maybe I can be better in business or here, or maybe this is like why I have these limiting beliefs, or why I always struggle to follow through on this thing, or whatever. Once you can understand the way you are, then you can look at it more logical point of view and see the actual value in it. I think with dudes, they don't necessarily see the value because they think it's just emotional. They think it's just, let's cry with a stranger rather than let's figure out what's going on up here,
And I think, so there's a guy who I had on the podcast a couple months ago called Christian Chalfon, and he is a therapist, mainly with men, and he runs a business called Men's Retreat UK. So what he does is he gets men together and they go away for a retreat for about 3 days, and that's their therapy. And I think there's a stigma that therapy doesn't need to be you're in this box room with a therapist, you sit down for 50 minutes, and then voila, everything's solved. And I think, and I don't know as the definition, but the therapist is not there to tell you what's right from wrong. They're just there to guide you and bring light to the surface. It's kind of, you've got a microscope, you're able to look down and see that, we've got these particles here, and we've got this here, and there's bacteria here, and understanding stuff. And I think for a lot of, if we're just talking about men, because obviously you and I are both men, so I can't speak on the women part and that, but I think women are just, as we know, they're naturally better at opening up and being more emotional. However, if there was a platform, or if men were able to turn around and just actually share real deep thoughts with each other, whether it's going for a drink or just probably I would lean into more, say, the hike side of things, or doing something that's hard, because I think you focus more on your endorphins as opposed to just dopamine hits. And I think when you're in an endorphin state, then you're in this place where you just open up in a different way, as opposed to a few drinks, then you get pissed, then it just kind of goes down into a bit of a slippery slope. Point I'm making is, I think if more men turned around and opened up, we would have less of these men who hit their 40s, 50s, who essentially overweight, down in the dumps, depressive. And I've seen tons of them. And I think, man, what went wrong in your life for you to get like this? And that's not me being judgmental. That's just me being really honest and looking at someone. And I think I don't want to become that man, first off, and I'm sure you don't. But if we took that time to really self-reflect and just get honest with ourselves and ask ourselves the deep questions properly, that we'd have better outcomes for ourselves further down the line.
Yeah. I think people just don't necessarily have the tools that they need in order to self-develop, and in order to sort of study themselves. Maybe if these dudes did have therapy, they'd have that mirror and they'd see, what's going on in themselves, and and what actions they can take to work towards it. So to be honest, I have sympathy for those people as well, because
Hmm.
I look, I'm in a lucky position. I got woken up in my life, and I've always had this driver of Memento Mori within me, and remembering death all through my life. So that's driven me, and then I've been in touch with like cool mentors and cool people that have joined me for the journey, and people like Jack, who's been a real brother to me. That you know we can have that space where we can be a little bit vulnerable as dudes and just talk about all that stuff that you wouldn't necessarily talk about publicly, and it's totally healthy. And like, look, everyone has their shit in their lives. Everyone's got to deal with it in a way, and at least um, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Hmm.
It doesn't even have to be shared in dealing with it, but sometimes just speaking about it, sharing it, getting it out of within you, sharing, like releasing that energy. And I know that sounds a little bit woo woo, but I do believe it to be a thing. Like releasing that energy really lightens the load on a person, right? So I take sympathy for those people, because they just don't have the tools that they need in order to release that energy, and in order to work on oneself. So
Couldn't agree more. Callum, I've got a question for you from the internet, which I'd be really, really intrigued for you to answer. So it reads: a fellow entrepreneur said, how do you go about creating a content strategy and building a business with a purpose?
how do I go about building a content strategy and a business with a purpose? Well, I guess it all kind of starts from purpose, really. It's really sitting there and analyzing and thinking about, well, look, what is it I want to achieve? Like, what do I want to get out of this? And I guess the only real way that I can sort of explain this is by explaining the story of how we came up with our formats, and I guess our hero format of like this "What's Your Dream" series. So you know, it kind of all starts like, okay, what's the purpose? Well, in our case, the purpose was we want to teach people business. So, we were exploring this in lots of different ways. And one of which, when I first met Simon, when he had like 6,000 followers on Instagram, he was making these talking head videos where he just shares his business knowledge raw on short form formats, and just sharing it with the world. And these videos did a couple of thousand views, something like that. Okay, but nothing crazy. And the reason for this is that content format was pretty stale. There were so many people on the platform that were doing that. So I always like to look at content from an approach of like, what can I do that's different? What can I do that stands out? And I think truly the best frame for people to think about this is the frame within, what is my own little TV show that I would love to share with the world? So what is it you enjoy? What is it you're good at? What are your, competitive advantages as a person that you can leverage to create your own little show? So in Simon's case, the dude is like crazy, crazy good at thinking on his feet. He's crazy, crazy good at speaking, and he's crazy, crazy charismatic. So, looking at it within that frame helped me identify our perfect format. And that format came one day when Simon shared in the group chat with Jack and I a video of him going up to someone in Pizza Express and asking them, "Would you ever start a business of your own?" And as soon as I saw this video, I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait! There's something in this. Like, we got to pull on this thread a little bit more and work on it." And this kind of
Question:
brings me to the go on, go
What,
on.
what do you think? The first instance, what do you think gave him the impetus to go out there and ask someone what's their dream of Pizza Express?
Sure. So I'll give you the full story. So Simon was on TikTok Live one day, and he was sharing his business knowledge as he was back then, doing the talking head stuff. But this was a live, and on TikTok Live just released this new like thing where you could gift people, right? And you could gift people like small amounts of cash as they're doing a live, like a tipping function, right? So Simon came off the live and he realized, oh shit, I just made $100 from this live. That's incredible. But Simon's philosophy is to never charge anyone for help, and he was helping people on this live. So he decided to go to Tesco and walk up to a lady and ask her, "Would you ever start a business of your own?" And she spoke about this whole business idea she had, and in Simon's words, like her eyes lit up, and like this whole energy shift in this woman changed. So Simon handed her the $100 and said, "Here you go. I'll be your first client." And Simon came out off the back of this like buzzing. It was really cool. It was a special moment for him. But he regretted never filming it. So this is the point where we get to where he went up to a guy in Pizza Express and took the video and handed him some cash as well. And he sent that video into the chat, and Jack and I were like, yeah, there's something in this. Let's pull on this thread. And, when really coming up with a content format, the whole point of this is like kind of the way I like think about it is like it's kind of like taking stabs in the dark and just trying things, like trying things, keep stabbing, and then suddenly, whoa, actually, I've got something here, I've hit something here. Let's pull on this a little bit more. So at that moment, we had found something. It's like, okay, this fits perfectly. It's perfect for Simon's like charismatic energy. It's perfect for him sort of thinking on his feet and being able to share this business knowledge in a fun way that entertains people first and then educates them subtly through it. So I was like, right, let's pull on this. And we started iterating on these videos and improving them each and every time. And this is really what you need to be doing if you're building a content format, because it's like building a company as well. It's like building content and a content media company, I guess, becoming an influencer, whatever it is you want to do. It is really like building a company. You need to find those feedback loops and make them as tight as possible and keep iterating with every single feedback loop. So it's like, make a video, release a video, see what's happening, see how it performs, find out what you can learn, iterate, and start again, and keep improving it each time throughout that loop. So we started doing that, and we did some stuff like changing the hooks and stuff. And we eventually landed on "What's Your Dream" as a hook. The reason being, these videos that started off, "Would you ever start a business of your own?" They were great. It was an interesting hook. But the issue was that it was only catering to a small niche, that being the business niche. And we really wanted to take this mission and this purpose worldwide, right? We wanted it to apply to everyone. So we tweaked it. We changed it from "Would you ever start a business of your own?" to "What's your dream?" And the simple reason being, not everyone wants to start a business, but everyone's got a dream, you know?
Makes sense.
So we kind of took it from there. So that is I guess that's my crash course, my speed delivery of like what makes a killer content format. It's really about, taking those stabs in the dark, finding something, building it around a purpose, and really beginning with that and identifying that in yourself. And then off the back of that, iterating until you make it better and better and better until you hit millions.
Jack did say that you're the most creative person he's ever met. And I give you absolute kudos to that, because that was so well delivered. And as you were saying everything you said, I came up with my own business idea for my own content strategy, because I admittedly look at my content at times and just think, it's just so boring. It blends into the feed. And I think if you want to stand out, you can never do stuff that blends in. It's so hard. You're trying to be a needle in a haystack, whereas why don't you be, I don't have an analogy for this, why don't you be your own thing? Why don't you work in your own lane? And as you said, one thing that I love that you mentioned here that Hormozy says, it's what's unique to you, what's your unfair advantage. Hormozy goes on about the fact that he worked in gyms and he did this. Simon, what's individual to him is his story. And everyone, if we circle it around, is we have our own story. You went from being a lifeguard to the chief creative officer at Help Bank, and no one else in the world is going to have that exact same path. So how do we flourish? How do we take stuff from that? And I think to the point there, it's something that people just really need to lean into, is just be authentic. And that's a thing that one of my best clients has ever said, and she just lives by. She is her own enigma. She has purple hair, and she said, I will never change for anyone else. And that's me, and fair play to her. She's got over 200,000 followers on Instagram. So I guess that's the big thing that I've really tried to take away and lean into. Callum, what's the plans for 2025? What are you most looking forward to?
What am I most looking forward to in 2025? Well, I have to say I enjoy travel a lot, and I hope to travel with the business as much as possible. Like I said, our content is worldwide, our mission is worldwide. So one focus of mine is unlocking, Simon's brand within multiple markets in the world and cultures that don't speak English. So, for example, we have a Brazilian page right now, which is growing. It's over 130,000 followers in a couple of months or so. We have an Arabic page too, and we're launching a bunch of other pages. So that's one thing I'm working on. And off the back of that, I would love to travel to these places and really unlock Simon's brand within that. We're going to be heading to Dubai early next year. We're going to be doing lots of other cool stuff as well. So on a personal note, I'd love to travel. But beyond that, I just want to keep spreading our message far and wide out there in the world. And I would love to see 1 million people signed up to helpbank.com, for example. So, if any of your listeners are out there that want to get help, that want to learn how to start a business, you can sign up to Help Bank for free, and you can get that help for free. And for any of your listeners that want to contribute and help other people, we have a leaderboard, and we give prizes to those that help the most at the end of each month. So you can do that there as well. What else am I looking forward to next year? Yeah, I just want to keep building, man. Like what we're doing, and I'm sure Jack has told you. Like one of the big things that we believe is that you should think so big that people think you're crazy. We have a big vision for what we're building, and lots of exciting things, and launching multiple new ventures next year. So I'm excited to be working on them and building a bigger thing and spreading our message far and wide, and also building outside of Simon's brand as well, because so far it's been awesome. We've built some great stuff off the back of Simon's brand and Simon's message, but it's time to take that message beyond just Simon, because he's only one dude. He can only do so much. And this mission which we're on, we're here to help as many people as possible. So that's what I'm looking forward to next year.
So cool. And the travel destinations, I love traveling, and it'd be cool to meet you somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
Have you got any places earmarked apart from Dubai? Any countries that you're like, yeah, we really want to hit? Maybe Brazil, as you mentioned, you're starting a Portuguese.
Yeah,
channel.
definitely Brazil. We have some loose plans to head to Sao Paulo and to Rio, probably like Q1, Q2 next year. I would love to see some more of the US. I think the US is really cool. It gets a bad rap, but I think if you're in the right places, then it's pretty cool. I'd love to go to Austin. Actually, I've never been to Austin, and there's a big creator scene there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely up there on the list. Personally, and absolutely totally outside of work, I would love to go to Japan. We don't have much reason to go to Japan just yet. We don't have any plans to do the pages in Japanese just yet. But I hear awesome stuff about that city, about that country, and I love exploring places that are a little bit different. For example, just got back from Hong Kong. That's an awesome place, kind of blend between East meets West. So a pretty cool place. I'd love to visit more of China. And Japan's, I hear, is equally as weird. So would love to go there too.
I was in Japan last year, and I have to say it's the top 3 countries on earth for me.
Yeah. It's
what would you say yours? Sorry, I think we had a bit of a delay. What would you say your top 3 countries that you've been to?
Top 3 countries I've been to. That's tough, dude. That's tough. US, for sure.
No one ever says the US, to be fair.
Dude, it's so diverse. It's massive. It's a huge market. I think if you're doing business, then the US has got to be there, surely.
Mm-hmm.
Big creator scene as well, I guess, with what we're doing. So it's well worth being there. I love the Mediterranean, so I'd have to say maybe Croatia is up there in that list. Croatia's beautiful, underrated as well, I believe. You know what? Last one, I'm going to go for Hong Kong as well, as a Chinese territory. It's cool. And I guess I've recently been reminded of how much I love that city. It's so hard to describe. And I think Hong Kong is one of the most underrated places in the world, simply because no one really talks about it. But look, it's a massive vertical city, hugely densely populated, crazy energy there, where a real feeling of like you can do anything there. And then you take a 5-minute walk, you're in the jungle. You take another 10-minute walk, you're up a mountain. You take a 10-minute cab from there, and you're at the beach. Like, Hong Kong is a really awesome place that I don't think many people speak about. And I don't think anyone really will understand what I'm talking about until you actually go there and visit. Not to mention the great food they have there as well. So, yeah, I'd probably say those 3. I'd say the US, Croatia, but I mean the Mediterranean in general, because it's just awesome, full of culture, beautiful. And then Hong Kong as my underrated pick.
Could you see yourself living abroad away from the UK?
Definitely. This is in my plans, to be honest with you. Like I said, you get one life, and I want to live my life to the max. And as part of that, I want to experience as many places as possible. I'm very lucky and very privileged that I get to travel a lot with my work. So I'd love to spend a lot of time all over the world, So this is part of my plans, yeah.
And where would you like to live in?
Where would I like to live? It's tough to say where I'd like to live. I can tell you for a fact where I want to spend time. I definitely want to spend time in the UK during the summer. In the winter, less so. Probably be back for Christmas with the family, but yeah, UK for sure for a period of time. Dubai makes sense to be there for a period of time as well. And it's very clean. It's a nice city. I think I'd probably get sick of it after a while. Hong Kong, like I said, just because it's awesome, got some character. Um, I feel like there's so much more for me to see there. Um, you know, I went to Bali at the start of this year, and spending some time there is really nice. I can't say for certain how productive I'd be there or not. I know there's a big nomad scene out there. I tried it. I wasn't hugely productive because I just wanted to explore. But maybe if I was a little bit more focused, a little bit more settled in a villa for a month or two,
Mhm.
I'd be a bit more productive there. Yeah, US, so LA, um, yeah, Austin, uh, yeah, Florida as well. We spent some time in Miami. Miami's a pretty cool city too. I mentioned to you before, want to spend some time in Brazil as well. Yeah, and then other than that, it's Europe really. So maybe Barcelona for a period of time, maybe Italy for a little while as well. Yeah, Croatia. Yeah, those are all on my list.
The world's our oyster, isn't it?
Yeah,
Which is
for sure,
amazing.
man.
Callum, we're going to share all links after the podcast. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you want to find me personally, probably the best place to find me and where I'm most active is my Instagram, which is at Callum Church 15. But beyond that, to find out all about the work that I do with Simon and with HelpBank, the best place to get all those links is probably simonsquibb.com. And we have a whole list of stuff where you can join our community, you can join HelpBank. Yeah, you can unlock a bunch of stuff there as well. So simonsquibb.com is the best place to find me.
Unreal. Callum, thank you so much for your time. This was such a fun shoot.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you, man.